$2.5 billion have been lost by Americans at the beginning of 2024, the first half of 2024, to investment fraud. And that number continues to grow. This is all from an article from Motley Fool. And what will surprise you is the age group that actually got frauded the most and the means of how they got frauded. So if this sounds like something that is interesting to you and you know you need to know this, stick around because that is what we are talking about today. Now, first, before we get into it, hi, I'm Lisa. Been a financial advisor for over 14 years, and I help people get to financial freedom as quickly as possible. If you are new here, we are so happy to have you. And if you are a regular and returning, welcome back. Hopefully this is another great video for you. So let's talk about investment fraud. Investment fraud is a little different than regular fraud. It's not an email that you get saying, I'm stuck in Kenya, can you send me money? That's what we think of, or somebody that calls you on the phone necessarily and says, let's link up your bank account to such and such. Investment fraud is actually you putting money into an investment that turns out to be a Ponzi scheme, turns out to be a pyramid scheme, turns out to be a fake offering, things like that. Think Bernie Madoff, and we will get into Bernie Madoff in a bit on what people might have been able to look out for in that situation. But it is a growing issue, and we think that it's a growing issue for seniors. We typically think that seniors are the ones getting frauded, and that still is a big age group that gets targeted. However, there are two other groups that get targeted. One are the ultra busy, because people are just clicking, saying yes, whatever, trying to move forward to get through life. The other are new investors. And so the age group, according to this Motley Fool article, the age group that got frauded the most was age 30 to 39. That, I would say, is probably that new investor group. And the means that they got to their victim was through social media. They were direct messaging them, they were getting a hold of them, they were putting up faulty ads, whatever was out there, but social media was getting to them through influence or whatever to invest in these new things. And with the world that is changing, and that there is going to be more and more of these new offerings out there, whether regulated or not, I think it is super important to discuss how do you spot red flags when it comes to fraudulent investments, what do you do, and then how can you protect yourself so that you hopefully won't get into that situation. So if that sounds good to you, we are going to get into that. Okay, so the signs that you might be being offered a fraudulent investment. These are, I would say, people would say, of course, common sense, of course, but we don't necessarily think of them when we're going through it. And so these are just kind of good things to remember in the back of your head. And I always say the biggest thing is you've got to go with your gut. If you start to feel icky about it, even if it's not a fraudulent investment, that's probably not the right investment for you, at least at this time. So go with your gut. That is always the number one. But some other things you can look at is, if you are being pushed to make fast decisions on stuff, we're running out of time, you're going to lose your chance, we're closing this fund in, 5 days or whatever. You need to take a step back and say, why are they pressuring me to move forward on this? And is it legitimate, or is it just so that they can get my money as quickly as possible? I can tell you, as a very registered person, I'm registered rep, do all that stuff. I don't pressure my clients to do anything. I will tell them, if it's insurance, you might be getting older, and so, you don't want to let too much time go by or something like that. I want clients to make decisions on things. I don't want to be sitting there for years trying to get them to invest in whatever we're talking about that works for their plan. However, I never want clients to feel like there is some ticking time over here that they need to get it done. We don't work that way, because that's not the way you build a relationship. And if they're not trying to build a relationship with you, there might be something fishy under there. Okay. Might be, I don't know. Some people just are, kind of people, but I know that my business partner and I do not pressure people to move forward on things. And we've been in the industry a long time, and I don't know of any other people in this industry who are actually legitimate people in this industry doing this that pressure people to do that. So just to remember, just to keep that in the back of your mind. The other thing is too good to be true offerings. Never talking about the cons, only talking about the positives. That can be a problem as well. Every investment has a downside. And if they are not being honest to you what that is, then I would say you might want to move on to someplace else. And again, it doesn't have to have been a fraudulent product, but maybe that's just somebody not telling you the truth. And do you really want to work with somebody like that? The other thing is unregistered products, unregistered platforms. It's not at Fidelity or Schwab or TD Ameritrade's not there anymore, but other platforms like E-Trade, it's not on one of these platforms. And so you do run the risk when it's not on a platform that's well known, that's legitimate, that it can be fraudulent. And you do run that risk. And another thing that you want to look into is sketchy communication. So if they won't put anything in writing for you, that's a problem. If they won't give you a contract of some kind, that's a problem. If they are writing and the writing seems hurried, it doesn't seem like they took some time on this, even if it's a legitimate product, do you want to be involved with something that they weren't even willing to be professional on and have somebody, read? Sometimes I make mistakes too, but don't you want somebody to put together a contract that is well written, that somebody else proofread for them, that kind of thing. So you do want to keep that kind of stuff in mind. If the communication is a little sketchy, if you can't call them but they can only call you, or they're calling you just constantly, you might want to end that. So what can you do to protect yourself before all this happens? Well, you want to look up and investigate products and in different investments on your own. Doing a web search is a huge plus. People don't do that enough. We don't take enough time. My husband always laughs because I'm always looking up stuff, seeing what somebody's age is, seeing if somebody was married before, seeing when somebody won something. And I'm sure it drives people crazy, but I'm able to get a lot of information that way. I mean, remember when we used to have to go to the encyclopedia and pull it out and go, oh, this encyclopedia was before that even happened, or whatever. I mean, I love the internet because it gives me so much information. And you can also see the disparities on things. Like if you go on and you search something and one thing says one and then you go down and one thing says another. Or a thing I like to do a lot is put in an investment and put in cons, or a product and put in cons. What are the cons of XXX? What are the cons of this, that, or the other thing? And it will come up, because don't you want to know what the cons are? So taking that time to investigate is really important. And that takes you out of that category of the too busy to do the investigation stuff. Too busy. The too busy can get you in a lot of trouble on this stuff. Use trusted platforms like we talked about. Ask questions. That's a huge one. For some reason, we feel very intimidated to ask questions, especially when it comes to finance, because we don't learn a lot about finance in high school anymore. I mean, do we learn anything at all anymore? I don't think we do. And this is why this is a growing issue with that 30 to 39 new investor, because they don't really know what they don't know. I mean, they don't really know how this all works. And so because of that, we feel stupid. We feel like we can't ask questions. That's a dumb question. I don't know how many times people say, this is a really dumb question. And I feel like, kind of I don't know, I feel kind of silly saying this, but I always go, there's no dumb questions. No, it's not dumb. Questions are questions. And if you have a question, I want you to ask it. If it's about like my dog's name or something, yeah, that's probably dumb when I'm trying to talk to you about an investment. But that's not ever what it is. It's something very legitimate. It's something that's a basic that they need to know for something that maybe I assumed they knew. They should ask these questions. And so that's important. And then I always say verify with regulators out there, whether it's SEC or FINRA, make sure you have an understanding of that. I know that there's a lot of offerings that aren't with the SEC or FINRA, so it makes it a little harder. But again, that web search is really important to do in those cases then. And search out the cons. Because I tell you, if somebody else got scammed, there's probably something out there. I mean, anytime a phone number shows up on my phone that I'm like, I don't know what that is, I pop it in as a web search. Half the time it comes up as spam, and I spam that thing right off my phone. That it's amazing how much information is out there that we're not getting. There's probably too much information that I do that. That's okay. So what do you do if you start getting into a conversation, you go, whoa, I think this is a scam. I think this needs to be cut off. Well, you stop all communication with them. There's no accusing. Just stop talking to them. Just stop. That's the most important thing. Document everything, collect emails, texts, maybe recorded phone calls. If you ask to record them and they let you do that, they probably didn't, but there you go. Contracts and names. All that stuff, and then report it either to the SEC, FTC, or local authorities, whatever works best for you. You can always start with the local authorities. They probably will get you in the right direction. And if you have given your banking information or any information about banking stuff to them, contact your bank, I would say first, to make sure they can stop any kind of transaction from happening. They are pretty good at being able to do that. If you give them that notice, they'll get on it really fast. So I wanted to kind of go into the biggest fraud that has ever happened, which is the Bernie Madoff fund. He was running a fund that was collecting millions and millions and millions of dollars in there, and he was creating false returns and sending out false statements to people. And they thought they were doing great when really their money was gone. That's the crux of the whole thing. He didn't invest any of their money. And so he was able to kind of take the money and have a revolving door because he had so many investments in there that he was able to make it seem like people were getting returns. And he would talk people into keeping their money there when they were trying to take money out and other things like that. He was very, very clever on how he communicated with people. And he did this for 30 plus years, I believe. If you are interested in what actually happened, there is a really good documentary or docuseries on Netflix. I don't know what it's called. I'm sure Bernie Madoff is in the title though. And it's very interesting to hear all the different things, who all the different players were, and that kind of thing, and how many times he almost got caught, but got his way out of it. And things that I noticed that I thought I would take to the bank with me and things, because obviously I'm not, that stuff can happen to anybody, right? It's not just because I'm a financial professional. I want to make sure that I protect myself and educate my clients and my friends, and my family. So one thing that I would say was really important to notice is that people didn't ask questions very much. They took his background, they took his how much experience he had and and they didn't feel like they could ask questions. Very rarely in that big amount of time did somebody come in and say, I want to see this. I want you to show me X, Y, and Z. It happened maybe once or twice in this long career of fraud that he had. And I feel like most people needed to ask more questions. They saw the returns, they heard the great things that other people who were investing with him said, and they gave him his money. Gave him their money, I should say. And we rely too much a bit on what other people say, instead of going with our own thing. It was this notoriety. It was, you were part of the in crowd if you could get your money in with the Madoff fund. That's what people thought. And he played on that. He played that I'm too good for everyone. You are so lucky to be with me. I hope none of my clients ever feel that way, because that's not the way I want it to be. I want it to be approachable. I want people to realize that this is their money. I have a complete understanding of that. Plus, I don't hold anybody's money. It's all held at Fidelity and Schwab and, different platforms that they can get to, they can do things with as well. So that's all gone. That was one thing that, it was a time, I don't know if he would be able to get away with that now, because there's all these online platforms. You have a Fidelity account, you have a Schwab account, you can log in. Just because you don't doesn't mean you don't have availability to. And back then it wasn't really like that. People didn't log into their, Bernie Madoff fund. It would have been much harder for him to do that. It's much easier just to do paper statements. So it's a lot different nowadays. I don't know if he would have gotten away with that. But what I was saying was, clients that come to me hopefully understand that this is their money. I'm just helping them. This is your money. These are your decisions. I'm here to help educate you. I'm here to help get you to the direction that you tell me you want to get to. And that's not what he was doing. He said, I know everything. Leave it to me. I'm smarter than you are. You're lucky to be with me. And that to me is a big red flag of somebody who could be doing poorly, but also could be in their own way. Let's say he was a legitimate investor. That kind of attitude really hurts you when you are making decisions about investing. So do you want to give your money to somebody who thinks that they're so great that nobody can question anything? No. And so I would say that that's another big red flag that was out there. So I hope you go watch that or learn more about that, because I think people can learn a lot from that, especially, unfortunately, with investment fraud just ticking up and up and up. And just know that really, I'm on social media a lot, and that I would never reach out to anybody and say, I have a product for you. I have an investment you should be doing. I don't know you. I can't do that. I'm a fiduciary. And so that's not going to happen with a legitimate person. So if you are getting inundated by things, just turn them off. Just report them to Facebook or YouTube or whoever's reaching out to you via direct messages, and get that to stop, and you will be much better off. So hopefully this will be all information you don't ever need to use, but I just think it's better for you to know than not know. Like the NBC, the more you know, right? Those are silly ads, but they were so important, and they were right. The more you know, the better off you're going to be. So hopefully you can take this information, understand some of the concepts, just keep them in the back of your head, and you will not be part of the statistics for the Motley Fool for 2025. All right, and with that, I'm going to let you go. Hope you are doing well. Continue to keep fighting the good fight, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.